Welcome back to the channel. I designed this patriotic wall hanging 5 years ago. It's a great project for children and adults to do, as it's fairly easy and requires minimal hand sewing, but is a great way to teach a beginner how to do a straight running stitch. Adult supervision will be needed if a child is making this project, though. For the applique pieces, I'm using a product called Wonder Under, which you can find next to the batting and the pellon at a fabric store. The wall hanging measures approximately 7 by 11 inches when finished, with a 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch border or binding that I pulled over from the back. I start by tracing out the patterns that I'm going to need onto a thick cardstock. If you don't have a file folder like I'm using, and you can use the cardboard that comes in the middle of fat quarters or the little cardboard ads that come in the mail. The small stripe measures 9/16 by 4 1/4 inches. I drew the longer stripe 9/16 by 6 11/16, or 6 3/4 inches is close enough. The star I just drew by freehand using a ruler, or you could use a small cookie cutter, or you could use a heart if you wanted to. The not quite a square piece measured 2 3/8 by 2 3/4 inches. I had some leftover pieces of fabric that already had the Wonder Under ironed onto it, and so I'm just going through seeing what I can use, what fits into the pattern pieces that I have, and then tracing them onto the backs so that I can cut them out. These pieces have been in storage for about 5 years, and when I cut them out and then ironed them onto the fabric, they still worked just fine. These are the pieces that I cut out that I used from the scraps that I already had. So now I'm cutting the front and back pieces that I'll need. For the front piece, you'll need to cut a piece of fabric 7 by 11 inches. And I like to use a color that will contrast the front and the back fabrics. The backing piece measures 8 1/4 by 12 1/4 inches. I didn't have enough scraps to do the amount of wall hangings that I'm making, so I'm just tracing some more pieces onto the Wonder Under, but that will give me a chance to show you how to iron it onto the fabric. Be sure to trace your pattern out on the smooth side of the Wonder Under. I'll count out the pieces I need for a particular fabric and then cut them out into a group and put them on the fabric that I need. The Wonder Under comes on a bolt like fabric does, and you have the person cut the amount that you want. There is this instruction piece that is folded in the bolt, so be sure and ask the person cutting the Wonder Under if you can have the instructions. But it's basically just to hold the iron onto the Wonder Under for 5 to 8 seconds. Here I needed 2 squares of the blue, so I've put those with the blue fabric. I needed some red stripes, so I've put those with the red fabric. And these pieces are being put with the white fabric. Wonder Under is a brand name for a fusible web. So any fusible web that you can find will work out just fine. To attach the Wonder Under to the fabric, you need a very hot iron. And my fabric I was using had some creases in it, so I was just ironing it first. I'm not using steam, so there's no water in the iron. I place the rough side of the cutouts next to the wrong side of the fabric, and then just set the iron on top of it for 5 to 8 seconds. If you make a mistake and put the rough side up, you'll end up with a horrible mess because it will stick to your iron. Having said that, everyone does that at least once, so don't feel stupid if you do it. So now I've cut out all of the little applique pieces and I'm laying them on top of the front pieces to the wall hanging. And I don't know why I decided that I needed to make 8 of these, but that's how many pieces I have. I decided to do 4 of them as giveaways to friends, and then the number escalated to 8 for some reason. So I'm just laying out my flag pieces here so I get the right color combination on each front piece. And I've also paired a backing with each front piece so I can see how I like everything together. I used a red or a navy blue fabric for the backing of the wall hanging. I went ahead and removed the papers from the backs of those pieces. Next, I measure to see if it's centered. And this is where it gets a little fussy, trying to make sure that it's centered and that all the pieces line up together. You may have to tuck some of the shorter stripes underneath the square piece, the blue piece. And it may be easier for you to do this while it's on the ironing board, so you don't have to reposition it after you move it to the ironing board. The longer side of the blue piece should be placed horizontally, but I'm pretty sure I've done it both ways, so it's not that big of a deal if you happen to put the shorter side horizontally. I didn't have the camera rolling when I went ahead and did this, but just to show you that you just set the hot iron. I had it on the hottest setting, and you set it on for 5 to 8 seconds without moving it around. Just set it in place, and then it will set that glue. The instructions on the Wonder Under say that when you do this step that you need to have a damp ironing towel on top of it, but I never do that, and it works out just fine. So whatever you think you want to do. So there it is. And just doing another one here. Once the paper backing is taken off the pieces, especially the white pieces, it's really hard to tell which is the front and the back. I had one white piece that was upside down, and so it stuck to the iron on one of the other pieces I was working on. So just be very careful and check everything twice. If you make a mistake, you can lift up the pieces while they're still hot and move them around. If you do that, just be very careful because the glue could burn your skin. You could perhaps use tweezers if you needed to. Here I'm cutting out some scraps of batting that I had from quilts, and I'm cutting them the same size as the front piece, so they are 7 by 11 inches. Once the batting is cut, I'm just making a quilt sandwich just so I've got my pieces all ready to go. And I forgot the star on this one, so I'll have to go back and iron a star onto that. I got my button box out with the idea of attaching some embellishments to some of these wall hangings. If you didn't want to sew the buttons on, you certainly could attach them with some hot glue. I got out some blue and red embroidery floss. I used 2 strands of thread to do a blanket stitch around the flag. You don't need to do the buttons or the embroidery if you don't want to. It looks perfectly cute without it. To start the blanket stitch, I take a long length of 2 strands of navy blue embroidery floss and knot one end and then come up at the edge of the red stripe. I take a stitch diagonally and go down, but don't pull it completely through yet. Then I come back up at the edge of the red stripe about a 1/2 inch away from the first stitch, and then loop that loop of thread around the needle and pull it up and pull it tight. And then I just keep repeating the process. If you wanted to make this design into a pillow instead of a wall hanging, you certainly could. Just iron the applique pieces onto a larger piece of fabric. Or if you wanted to make a table runner using 5 or more of these pieces sewn together, you could do that as well. Just keep in mind that anything that you're going to have to wash, that you need to stitch with the sewing machine and not just rely on the Wonder Under to keep it together. I haven't needed to secure anything down with this being a wall hanging because I don't plan on washing it. Then I fold over the backing to make the binding and then pin it down. Snipping off the corners and making mitered edges on the corners. I take a long length of embroidery floss and put it on my needle and start around the edges with just a straight running stitch. And I'm using 2 strands. I don't put a knot in the end, but I leave about 3 or 4 inches left so that when I go all the way around and come back, I can secure it with a bow at the top. I just leave the edges undone. I don't fold them under. I just leave them raw for a rustic or kind of folk art kind of look. You can fold them under if you'd like, or even machine stitch this part if you'd like to. In the United States, we have 2 national holidays that focus on patriotism that occur during the summer. The first one in summer is Memorial Day, which occurs the last Monday in May, and is to remember all of those who fought in wars. The second one is our Independence Day that occurs on July 4th. And here it is done. I just need to tie the 2 loose threads into a bow. You can sew a little plastic or metal ring on the back as a hanger if you'd like, or just go the lazy way like I do and just pin a safety pin on there as a hanger. I was able to get 7 of these finished out of the 8 in a week's time. So going back to Memorial Day and Independence Day, I usually have a few things up in my home that remind me of those days in the summer. I made 2 extra to offer as giveaways. This one for my YouTube channel and a different one for my Instagram page. So if you'd like to enter yourself in a drawing to win this, all you have to do is subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and then in the comment section, write what your favorite thing about summer is. And this contest is open to all countries, even though you may not be interested in an American-themed handicraft. The deadline for entry will be Saturday, May 1st, 2021 at midnight. And then I'll announce the winner in my video the following Monday. So there you have the Patriotic Wall Hanging. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.